And we're back once again, XW Universe. I apologize. We've been just having a few technical difficulties as we get this thing off the ground here. But I think we might be getting close to getting a few things ironed out as we go along. Let me see what we can do here. I've got... Okay, I think we got this going here. I apologize. As you know, I'm a little technical behind. Mr. Curtis usually just provides me with flip phones and a couple of pieces of candy, but it is what it is. See if we can get some. See if we can get an invite in here as we go along. Right? Exactly. I think we might have got. Let's see. Cross our fingers. It might work. Maybe, maybe not. We're throwing mud at the wall here, folks, as we go along here. What we're going to get into as we attempt this here, tomorrow night in Salina, Kansas, xWe Gold Rush 2019 will be live from the Ambassador Hotel. Lots of big things are going to be taking place. Get out, be a part of it. It is going to be an awesome, awesome show as we go along. Looky here. Looky here. We have right here. This was the big Rene Martinez. The Knight Owl has joined us here on the XW. And I think I'm calling that mic issue there. I still have an echo on my end there.
You sound a lot better, Rusty.
A lot better? Okay, good. Rene Martinez, the Night Owl. Current host on the Wrestle Talk podcast. Huge wrestling fan. Very knowledgeable, very experienced. Big announcement. He is now the lead commentator of XW Wrestling. He will be calling the shots in the play-by-play desk for the XW. As we move into a whole new dimension, going into the future as the XW grows, the entire Kansas Wrestling Alliance, particularly the XWE. Rene Martinez is going to be on board part of that, to give you the fans all the action, all the play-by-play as we go along. Big thing that was just announced was a deal and a channel that was set up on Twitch, which will be the big live stream service. You can download the app. It's on the desktop as well. I believe ours is under xWe _Salina. I believe that will be our channel there. I just learned about the service here not very long ago, so I just got on board on that. But that would be one of our primary outlets now for the rest of the world to be able to watch the XWE. Also, we've been doing a lot on YouTube, full shows, matches, and everything else. I believe there's some things in the future that are kind of cooking as we go along. But I want to welcome Rene Martinez to XWE Live. And Mr. Martinez, tell us a little bit about just kind of introduce us to what we can expect. Just give us a background on yourself there, sir.
All right. Well, as I always do, our viewers and that are familiar with me and my work on the Wrestle Talk podcast, it would only be appropriate if I said, "Que pasa, que pasa, que pasa." That is kind of my catchphrase as I introduce myself to the audience every single week on the Wrestle Talk podcast. And really, when it comes to me and my pro wrestling journey, that's kind of where I have to start. A couple of years ago, my wrestling godfather, Sonny Mayo, South Philly's own, took me to my first independent show here in the Kansas City area. And when I tell you I fell in love, man, it was head over heels. My first show was over in Pearson Park for KCXW. And then 2 weeks later, I got to go to Metro Pro. And since then, I've kind of become enamored with the sport, a huge fan of it. And it rekindled aspirations that I had as a young man to potentially be an analyst or a commentator. I was invited to be a part of the Wrestle Talk podcast as a guest on several different occasions. One of the main hosts ended up having to step away because he went into film and production, and there was an open and vacant spot available. And my buddy Joe, who's over in Baltimore, who I believe is currently on the hunt for AEW tickets. They're going on sale in 1 minute. So my partner, Nightmare Jones, is actually sitting at his computer right now getting ready to purchase his AEW tickets because it's going to be in Baltimore, as a lot of you guys know. But anyway, man, it's been a long ride. We're moving into episode 256 together. And as you can see behind me, man, we're going to have Barry Horowitz on the show, who is a well-known professional wrestler, really pretty much throughout all circles for his work back during the Attitude Era. But ultimately, Rusty, what really kind of fuels my fire is independent wrestling. Again, since going to my very first show, I was like, this is incredible, getting the opportunity to see these guys work inches away from you versus going to the bigger shows where you're way up in the stands and you don't really get that personalized experience. That experience allowed me to step into a realm where I could contribute to the pro wrestling community. And we've been trying to do that now for the better part of 4 years, man. And as it's gone on, I've gotten phone calls from well-known promoters throughout the Midwest, and they're like, hey, you know what? You do a pretty good thing on the podcast, man. Any chance you might be able to translate that into commentary work? And kudos to Jordan Smiley for giving me my first opportunity. And it's been a hell of a ride ever since, man. I'm doing shows pretty much every weekend now. I'll be obviously at Gold Rush on the 3rd. I'll be in Overbrook for Great Plains and John Phelps on the 8th. And then, of course, we've got our biggest show of the year, Takeover 6, on the 17th for KCX, man. So it's been a freaking whirlwind, Rusty, and every single time I get an opportunity to get behind the mic and see you guys do your thing and to see the guys in the ring do their thing, I honestly still get goosebumps, man. Like when Stone Cold's glass would break back in the day when I was a teenager, I get that feeling every single time I step behind a mic at a show, man. It's hard to put into words.
Absolutely.
I know.
Like you said, you're a big fan of wrestling. There's a lot of great promotions right now. A lot of great stars. You know, as I do, you go back a little ways too. You know, independent wrestling is down and down. Right now, it is on fire. There's a lot of good stuff going on all around the country. Particularly here in Kansas, right in the Midwest, with the Kingston Alliance and the especially xWe. Tell us a little bit, Rene, how did you specifically find the xWe? How did you run into that, and how did you study the xWe itself?
Well, you know what? A lot of my amigos from here, from Kansas City, you could hear the buzz from the shows that we were doing here in this area. And I think it started to happen when some of the guys from xWe actually started working in Kansas City. I got a chance to see Bones. I got a chance to see Kuda. I got a chance to see Blade, which, by the way, that dude is huge, menacing dude. So I got a chance to see all these guys, and being kind of in the media as the host of the Wrestle Talk podcast, I started to ask questions. I was like, never seen that guy before. And so, of course, you kind of start gathering information, bits and pieces, start following these guys' pages. And then I started seeing advertisement in Topeka and Wichita and Salina and Hutchinson and so on and so forth. And I go, man, I drive 3.5 hours, 4 hours to go to St. Louis a couple of times a year to go and support some of the promotions out there. I'm like, why am I not going west? So then I said, I'm going west. And I started going to shows and just kind of sitting in the crowd as a fan. And at one point, a gentleman who you're pretty familiar with, his name is Billy Simmons, approached me and he said, hey, Rene, kind of been listening to you do your show. I got a chance to listen to some of your commentary for some of the promotions in the area. Why don't you come out and check us out? I'll let you sit with me. We'll kind of talk, kind of pick your brain, you pick my brain, and see if it's something that we can make work. And I did that. I went out. It was the biggest show of the year that you guys did. Forgive me for forgetting. I don't like
Awakening.
Awakening. That's right. It was the Awakening show. And, dude, I had okay, so I try to be very transparent and honest. So, and if it hurts anybody's feelings, that's fine. But up to that point, I had never seen a more professionally run show from the backstage perspective. At some of the other promotions that I'm at, I pop in backstage, say hi to everybody, and then I go. At this show, because I wasn't actually working, I got to actually sit back there and see how things were flowing from start to finish. I was blown away. I was like, wow, this organization, they got their you-know-what together. And I was like, wow, I could definitely get behind these guys. And I had a chance to talk to Mr. Curtis. I got a chance to talk to Billy and a couple of the guys that kind of pull the strings over there. And I was like, yeah. Because if anybody listens to Wrestle Talk, man, we pride ourselves on two things, man. Quality and consistency. The consistency we've been doing, that's why we're on episode 258. But the quality is always something that we struggle with. And I always admire people who go out of their way to produce quality content. From the stage, the way things were set up backstage, and the catering, and the fact that there was already a camera there, and you doing interviews, and you obviously are very familiar with everybody on the roster. I was like, I can get behind this. And so once Awakening was over, we kind of had a conversation afterward, and it was like, hey, so what do you think? And I was like, let's freaking go. And here we are, man, ready to kick off Gold Rush on Saturday night, and I could not be any more excited, brother.
Absolutely. And I was absolutely ecstatic when I was brought up your name to be a part of this. I thought, getting this one out of the park as far as somebody who would be the passion and the experience you have that would bring to the table. No doubt about it. You are going to be the one that tells the story as we go along, and as we continue on. I think you're going to be great person in that commentating desk there. Like I said, we continue to grow this thing. It continues to get bigger. When I got involved with it was just still in the growing process. We come from some pretty humble beginnings as we get going, but it has gotten to a point where it is really worldwide. There's a lot of people who are talking about what is going on here in the XWe. And you're absolutely right, Rene. There's a lot. I've never seen and I'm not because I've been involved with it or whatever. I'm telling you as a fan, I've never seen a run organization all the way across. And that's what really made me get behind it. I kind of got out of professional wrestling for some years because I just kind of they just really good. This really got me back into it. It's a great organization we got here.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm just sitting here thinking, man, and contemplating how quickly things have moved over the last couple of years. And you know what? You want to talk about timing. When I went to Awakening, I did not expect to see the quality of professional wrestling that took place that night. I'm familiar with some of the guys. I know Kit Reaver. I know Leo D. I know Hollis Giroux. I know some of the other guys. But I didn't expect Chandler Hopkins. I didn't expect Malico. I didn't expect Eddie Rydell. I didn't expect some of these guys who have a reputation throughout the community beyond just the state of Kansas. And then you've got some other guys that I'm just now starting to become familiar with, like Tino Valentino and Bennett James, that without a shadow of a doubt, these guys are going to be stars, whether it be in the state of Kansas or beyond that. And I'm just like, man, I'm going to get to call these matches before these guys hit it big. And it's very similar to kind of like the show. So, like, we talked to Punishment Martinez. He was on NXT last week. We talked to ACH. He was on NXT like 3-4 weeks ago. So it's always cool for me to know that I'm getting to call matches that people in 5 years will look back on and go, man, I wonder what he was like when he was in the Indies. And that'll be the voice that you hear. And all you'll have to do is go to Twitch /Salina /XWE_Salina. And it'll be your boy. It'll be my voice, the Knight Owl, who you'll hear calling these matches, man. So I'm not a historian by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think about that and get really excited about the idea that when people go back to reference these guys' career when they're kind of hitting that higher plateau, that they may go back and listen to something that I was a part of, and it's just a treat for me, man, not to mention what a huge fan I am of what these performers do inside the squared circle, man. Some of them are getting full-time contracts at other places. We saw Malico and Chandler Hopkins make an announcement just a couple of weeks ago about signing a fairly lucrative deal with a company that's really well known as well. But they recognize how great xWe is, and because they got signed, they didn't flake on their commitments with xWe. They're like, no, we want to be here, we want to be a part of it, and they're very smart because xWe on its own has gained a significant amount of traction. And when I went to Awakening, I did not expect to see somewhere between 300 and 400 people. Like I was like, whoa, these guys out here, like this is the best kept secret in the Midwest. How does nobody know about this? But now they know about it. And I'm a part of the team, and if anybody knows me, I'm going to be screaming it from the rooftops, man.
Absolutely. I can definitely vouch for that. Just in my time of getting to know you, you'll be right on top of it. And no doubt, like you said, you got a lot of the stars that come through, a lot of the wrestlers, a lot of the big companies are starting to look at. A lot of things like you said, and I can kind of say I've been in his career, I've been wrestling, been a part of it since even the early 80s, my age, but you look back and you look into that, they will reference that. They will see you telling the story as these young stars grow, as they build like that. Because this is a growing thing as we go along. And as you said, the environment at the Ambassador Hotel, what we got. It is a great environment. There's a lot of times on set as the auditorium of Kansas. I'm telling you right now, that is not just a fun quote to throw around. It literally is the crowd is on fire, and that little place there. I was there one night when Break Gallows was out there cutting a promo on his bike, and the fans were just booing him so hard. I haven't seen that since the days of Scream, Texas down there. I mean, you couldn't even hear him on the bike. So I mean, the fans are taking this in. We got some great passionate fans that are big followers. Reminds me too, the AEW at EW Arena, stuff like that. I mean, it's following that's along with us, growing and expanding as we go along. And I'm just so excited to have you to be doing along with it. Now I know too. I'll kind of jump around just a few little things here. You are the host of Let's Talk Podcast. Give us just a little bit of information on that, if you will, there.
Well, yeah, absolutely, man. And I'll tell you what, I'll just point to one thing specifically. As you can see here over my right shoulder, there's some posters behind me. So what we've done is we've taken our platform, which is a podcast, and actually made an event out of it. And we've been doing this now for 2 years. So the listeners of our show and also the members of our fantasy wrestling promotion, which that's a whole nother conversation, but they're absolutely amazing contributors to everything we do at Wrestle Talk. We got so big. Rusty, and I'm sure you've had pro wrestling watch parties, right? You're a big wrestling fan. There was a time where I squeezed 48 people into my 950 square foot apartment.
There you go.
And my wife, and for those of you who don't speak Spanish, you may want to hit the SAP button if it's available on Facebook. She was like, "Estás loco? No más gente dentro de mi casa, para afuera." And that means no more. I can't have any of all these people in my house. I want them out. And she was like, "I can't do this anymore. We cannot do this anymore." And so I was tasked to make a decision. Am I going to just kind of grow up and move on from this thing and do some more adult stuff like, I don't know, read newspapers and play golf? I mean, I don't know. But that's not my style, man. It's bigger or better, right? Go big or go home. So I was like, okay, let's start figuring out what we want to do with these events. So I went out, hit the streets, right, and started soliciting places where we could do these watch parties. We've done 2 other locations which were successful, but then we found our home. Kind of like the Ambassador Hotel, the Kansas Sportatorium is the home of xWe, and I know you guys will run shows at other places, but that's always home. Well, for us, home is eSports in Shawnee, Kansas. And at this location, man, we'll have the pay-per-view on over 20 televisions. We'll have unlimited Xbox and PlayStation. We'll have people in character. We'll have local talent. I spoke to Kit Reaver when we interviewed him. He's going to be there. I spoke to Leo D when we interviewed him. He's going to be there. And there may be some more surprises. But ultimately, man, it all goes back to one thing, and that is the podcast itself that we do every single Wednesday at 7 p.m. Central Time. And we've got stars on varying levels that have joined us and will join us on the show. One week we'll go from talking to Kit Reaver, and the next week we're talking to Barry Horowitz. One week we'll be talking to Blade, and the next week we'll be talking to the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. That's the kind of clout that we've been able to gain because of those two things. We're consistent. We're here every single week, Rusty. And we try to produce good content, quality content. And we do things a little bit different. We do a fantasy wrestling segment. No one else does that. We do a Snippets of Truth, which is a short prayer segment. Nobody else does that. We like to tackle pro wrestling from a fan's perspective, but I think we have a unique perspective, which is what makes the show very much stand apart from pretty much any other wrestling podcast that you'll hear out there, because there are millions of them. There are millions and millions of great wrestling podcasts, but ours is very much its own thing, and I'm very proud of that.
Absolutely. I've checked it out many times. I enjoy sitting there listening to it. I've got a couple apps downloaded where I can download these, listen to them later. I know you had KWA stars on there. I figure we'll probably see some more in the near future as well on that. Like I said, it's a great show. Go check it out.
WrestleTalkPodcast.com. There's a Facebook page. Correct. Everywhere it's at WrestleTalkCast. All social media, but if you want to save yourself some trouble and find us all in one place, it is WrestleTalkPodcast.com. And believe it or not, Rusty, because I knew that we were going to have a great time during this interview, I have a little bit of breaking news for you right here on the xWe page. Are you ready for it?
I'm ready.
Awesome. All right. So not only am I the new lead commentator for xWe, not only am I going to get to call Gold Rush alongside the prodigy Aaron Helms. Goodness, I'm going to bring plenty of Advil to make sure that I can kind of, because you know how Aaron Helms is, right? Exactly. Right. So at the end of the last show, I got a chance to have a brief conversation with a young man that just reappeared at xWe, and that is the one and only Jamie Orion. Jamie Orion, in the very near future, will be a guest on the Wrestle Talk podcast. We have many things to discuss, but particularly the surprise return that we saw at the last show. Nobody expected it, and let me tell you, a lot of guys got a great reaction, but when Jamie came out, the place lost its mind. I swear the building shifted 3 inches to the left. I mean, it was crazy how fired up the fans got. So we are in the process of trying to ink or pencil in an appointment with Jamie Orion to join us on the Wrestle Talk podcast, bro. I could not be any happier because this young guy, as much as xWe is the best kept secret in the Midwest, I think Jamie Orion may be the single best kept secret in the Midwest. People don't know, but they're about to know how incredibly talented this kid is. And if he stays healthy, man, the sky is the limit. No question.
Oh, absolutely. Jamie Orion, going back for me, reminds me of a young Lightning kid when he very first started. He just had that right. He had the whole thing. Even before the X-Pac thing and everything else. He was just a Lightning kid. Jamie Orion has that with him. He's young, he's high flying. He's done a lot already in his young career. And it was great to see him back. And that's awesome. I look forward to that one. Definitely want to check that one out there. Because I know you got good things to say about the mutual things that he's got going on within the XWE. That is going to be excellent. You said you're going to be in the commentating guest with Aaron Helms. Obviously, we've had our American Way and things like that. It is what it is. I know you're going to be straight down the middle. I don't know about Aaron. I know he's got his own ideas. They've got the American Way ideas. But I count on you to be the straight narrow person. As we kind of talk about that, what kind of got you inspired maybe to pursue a commentating spot, something like that? Was there anybody in particular that really stood out in professional wrestling that you really kind of watched to kind of think, this might be something I kind of enjoy?
Well, I have to admit, probably like everybody else, I'm a huge fan of Jim Ross, that is now obviously with AEW. That was pretty much it for me. Like, he was the guy that I was like, wow, if I ever did this, I want to be like Jim Ross. But as I matured in my pro wrestling fanhood, I started to gain an appreciation for guys like Bobby Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon. And then one thing that always kind of stuck with me was Joey Styles and the fact that he was the one guy that was doing the whole show solo dolo. And I was like, I could do that. I could do that. And when Billy approached me, he was like, hey, man, he's like, we want to put together a commentary team, but right now we kind of want to, walk into it, tread lightly. You know what I mean? And I said, hey, if you're cool with it, let me take a crack at it. I'm like, I've done the single man commentary gig before. The people that have hired me to do it have been relatively happy with it. And you know what? By the end of it, there's two things that are going to be for sure. I'm going to have a migraine headache, okay? But I'm going to be full of adrenaline, man. Like, by the end of the show, I am still all wired up and fired up, and I enjoy it, man. And I'm totally cool with making the sacrifice that it takes to do it by myself. But when I saw Joey Styles with the energy and passion, and we can all hear him in the background still in our minds, oh my God, like we all know that sound, right? So I hope that with my que pasa, and increíble, like I can kind of develop my own persona and personality as a commentator. Maybe somewhere down the line, someone will go, hey man, I used to love that guy that was with xWe, man, that inspires me to want to do commentary. And aside from that, obviously, growing up, watching SportsCenter, I love Kenny Mayne and Stuart Scott and the analysis and the in-depth stuff that they would do, like Boomer, right? That Raiders, like, I always looked up and loved guys like that. And the very last guys, and probably nobody will know who I'm talking about, but when I grew up down in South Florida, it's not a Raiders hat, my fellow Kansans, it's a Florida Panthers hat, so I don't want you guys hating me thinking that this is a Raiders hat, because I get that all the time.
You'll get a free ticket on that one.
That's right. Yeah, I've gotten pulled over way too many times because the officer somewhere in the middle of Kansas is like, son, is that a Raider hat? I'm like, no, it's a Florida Panthers hat. It's a Florida, and then they let me right off. But Dr. Jack Ramsey, he was the commentator and the voice of the Miami Heat during the 90s. And this is when the Heat were good with Tim Hardaway and Alonzo Mourning, and they were facing off against Jordan and the Bulls and Patrick Ewing and the Knicks. I was enamored by listening to those guys call the action, and I always felt like they brought up the energy level. Like, I could definitely go to a wrestling show and enjoy it, but if I could go and listen to the commentary while the show is going on, to me, that pretty much is the cherry on top to an already amazing show. So those are some of my inspirations, man, and I know I'm kind of riding the coattails of some legends here, but hey, I'm going to take what I learned from them, kind of put my own salsa on the tacos, and hopefully everybody enjoys what we put out there.
Absolutely. The storyteller as we go along, and this whole journey, you will realize that laces it all together as we ride along. Obviously, we had some technical difficulties as we got started. It is what it is. But what I'd like to do down the road is maybe some more Q&A stuff. Put something out. I know between my schedule is all over the place. My shoot schedule is just chaotic. But maybe we can work something out again on here. Live Q&A or something with the fans. Bring them in, make them a part of it as well. Would you be on board with something like that?
Dude, absolutely. We do that every single week on the show. I always say this, man, the week where we have a ton of people call in and participate, those are the easiest weeks for me. That, and when we have great guests, that can just go on, because we had Tracy Smothers on, full-blooded Italian, right, from Tennessee. So I asked Tracy Smothers one question. 42 minutes. Tracy just went on and on and on, and it was great, bro. The people absolutely loved it. I might have cut in once or twice to sneak in a little bit of a promotional thing, but for the most part, dude, I love guests and I love callers who have something that they want to bring to the table, and that energy, man, that excitement, that enthusiasm that the fans bring. You can't replicate it. So absolutely, count me in. Let's get it scheduled, man. I would love to do it again. But I do want to remind everybody, man, this Saturday at Gold Rush, it's going to go down from the very opening match, which is Stormy Renee against Brene. And I'm quite disappointed in Brene because I've seen her work in other areas. And I've seen her be dastardly before, but what she did to Stormy Renee was borderline disgusting. I mean, it was just bad. I mean, Stormy was doing a great job. She had an opportunity to capture the vacated women's championship. That opportunity was stolen from her. Obviously, everything in between is going to be fantastic with Drake and Blade facing off against each other. And I want to give a special shout out to the officials. You've got Yali, you've got Ref Pinky, you've got Ref Joe, who never get any of the attention, never get any of the notoriety, but I watch them and how hard they work. And I want to make sure that I give them a shout out, man, because I know they're going to be very, very busy this upcoming Saturday, dude. The action is going to be hard hitting and they're going to be all over the place. So I hope the refs been putting in their cardio and drinking their Pedialyte because they're going to freaking need it, dude.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Officials that are part of it. Great names you mentioned. Also, Sean D. Referee for the XWE. I think he'll be back for this show.
That's awesome.
Great officials. I know they work in other places, things like that. A lot of good things. I'm going to go here real quick. You kind of mentioned some of the stuff about the card. You talked about Rene. I caught up with Stormy after the show. He was visibly shaking. Good opportunity, to take the gold. I have no doubt in my mind he will have many opportunities over time. But that was the opportunity he really had. Renee took that from her and unprovoked attack on that. But she was advantage Saturday night. No doubt about it. Big xWe main event for the XWE heavyweight title. I know you had on your show, talking a little bit. Tremendous talent right there. Malico, there's a reason he is the champion. He is something to behold. But I know he showed himself last year. He's got his rematch here. What do you think of that one? Just by knowing Kit Reaver himself there, and we didn't see Malico at the last show.
Well, I'll tell you this. I have another little treat. When Kit Reaver finished up his interview with us this past Wednesday, we actually got a chance to film a little something, which I'm going to be sending to you right after this broadcast, so you can post it on the xWE page. It's not very long, it's very short, very direct, but it's also very cool. So if you guys love or hate Kit Reaver, trust me, you're going to want to check it out. But as far as what I think about this match, obviously I'm going to call it down the middle, but I do have an opinion. I'm a commentator, right? My opinion is that everything you saw Kit Reaver do at the last show, be prepared to see him take it to another level. Because I think he's playing long ball. He wasn't overwhelmed by the challenge of Malico like a lot of his opponents are. He was ready to play the mind games that Malico is so famous for. We saw him. He came out with the it paint, right? With the balloons. He was creeping everybody out, man. And I'm pretty grateful to be where I am because I can see everything perfectly, but I'm not necessarily in the eyesight of any of the talent. So I just feel fortunate that neither of them came over and started messing with me, because I don't know if I would have been able to continue to do my job because of that essence of terror and horror that they both bring to the table. But when it comes to kind of how things are going to finish, it's hard to pick against the champ. You think about the battles that he had with Kados and how close those were. But at the same time, you think about Kit Reaver and the battles that he's had with Leo D. So many would argue it's his time. But ultimately, bro, you guys are going to have to be checking us out on Twitch. You guys are going to have to be at the Ambassadors, let's just say the Kansas Sportatorium on Saturday night in Salina to really figure it all out, man. I was kind of ready to make a prediction, but now I'm kind of second-guessing myself.
That's going to be a hard one, yeah.
Now, I was ready to go with Kit Reaver, but then I was thinking about Malico's last video where he's in the grass, and I think if this was even possible, I think a few more screws have come loose. And I don't necessarily know what that means. All I can say is if you're sitting in the front row, be mindful, because things could get real ugly between these two for the greatest prize in the game over XWE, the heavyweight championship. Man, I cannot wait to call this match.
Absolutely. And that's why I think our former champion, Kyle Kincaid, is not in the area. I think he was very intimidated by Malaco. He hasn't shown his face in quite a while. But like I said, Kit Reaver, he's playing the same mind game that Malaco brings to the table. And he's ready. He's loaded for bear. And he's eyeing the prize here in NWA.
Also, I'll go real quick. Some of the matches we go along here for the fans that didn't see my original cast as we had technical difficulty. United Liberty Championship beyond the line. People's Prince Leo D. Defending against Marsh Lewis. Seeing what happened back in the locker room, an unprovoked attack by Marsh Lewis on Leo D. He is loaded for bear and he is looking for revenge. AIWF Group Tag Team Champions will be on the line as the Natural Legend, the Natural Flex League, the Massive Legend Justin Gray, managed by the Preach, taking on the Pair Rock, Alexander, and Paradox, the Knockout King will be in this one. The Freeway, Fatal Freeway is what it is.
Social media championship, 100 Proof
Wrestling, Bubba Sutton, we've seen the video that he sent from the compound.
I made an attempt to look at the compound, and I know you start getting close, and you start hearing gunshots. None of the pay is worth it.
Like that for the fans. I saw a video on this very same page where you out in the middle of the dark and you said something like, Curtis said that who he looks in the dark is who finds. Like, bro, listen, we're in Kansas, so hopefully you exercise your right to bear arms. I don't know what the hell you're doing out in the middle of a field in Kansas somewhere. I'm just worried that somebody's going to swoop down and pick you up, man. I'm just thinking Jeepers Creepers, you know, like you better be careful out there, bro.
I don't know where Mr. Curtis gets some of those quotes like that. You know, I think he just makes that up sometimes just to have you out there on camera like that. It is what it is. And all I have on me is, pocket change and a couple bills coupons. That's about it. He will be taking Bubba Sutton will be taking on Reba. And I don't know if you guys recently Drake Gallows was taking Reba under his wing. Reba with that cash in, bro. Drake right now, he's bringing Reba under the wing, and he's challenging Blade, dude. Everybody look out for Drake Gallows, man. This is the second part of 2019. May just be his year, bro. I don't know. I'm keeping a close eye on him because he's vicious and he's ready to capitalize, and he's got some people watching his back. So look out. No doubt about it. He's loaded up some extra cases of water that he's bringing with him to shower the dirty fans of Salina as he likes to say. He's getting free showers. He said he would like to pay for that at some point, but that is what it is. But he has an opportunity at the top prize in the Kansas Christian Alliance, the Heavyweight Championship, held by Blade. Blade's been absolutely on fire all the way through 2019. He's had a lot of fires set that have invoked his volcano to erupt. He was an absolute sleeping giant that was awoken. And that whole deal that he went through against Flex Reed and Justin, I think that whole thing kind of helped him break through to another level. Not that, Blade's well known and well respected in the great state of Kansas and has been for a while now, obviously hailing from the back streets of Chicago. But when he went up against them, what was the name of those guys? They don't call themselves that anymore. They were Hornway. Yeah. So when he was beefing with them, that's when I think Blade took it to another level, bro. And he's had incredible matches recently against Kit Reaver and guys like that. So you're going to be hard-pressed. I think Drake would have probably been better off waiting for Blade to lose the belt to somebody else and then cashing it in, because I don't know if this is the right time to be challenging the bad Blade. Right, exactly. That is going to be an excellent match. I don't know if we'll be able to contain both of those guys there. Another match, ECW Grand Prix Championship, and obviously, a little background, the Kansas Alliance, Championship Wrestling, all part of it. Titles freely defended at all the shows. So you will be getting the opportunity to ECW Grand Prix Champion, Prince Vale in action. What a talent he is. Recently got a deal with Wrestle One over there. So there's no doubt.
Shout out to Sonny Ono. Sonny Ono, former guest and current member of the Wrestle Talk family. So yeah,
Absolutely.
0-1 is
absolutely. What a tremendous expert that is on professional wrestling. Talent like Chris Vale. There's no doubt that he's got something that really caught Sonny Ono's eye on that. He'll be having Chandler on that one. That is going to be a great match. Also, a big four-way match. At the United Liberty Championship. A big singles opportunity by Eddie Rydell. He recently gave a little interview, pretty upset. I believe in a couple places, but he is loaded for bear. He is not messing around. American Hero Johnny Page is another one in that. James, that's a new name that's been in the air. And Latin Valentino we've seen in the area quite a bit. They all have their opportunity to walk away with a title shot. United Liberty Championship. Time that Mr. Curtis gets around to get something signed. Also, let's see. Make sure I didn't miss anything here. Big mixed tag team match. The Connoisseur. Now Plum Kenny, as he likes to be referred. I don't know how to refer to him. You feel however you want to do it. That is what it is. He's got the dark and mysterious Morgan LeVay. She creeps me out a lot of times. She's walked in on some interviews and stuff. Just stared at me and I. We hightailed it out of there. They've got Jimmy Ryan and the bad string Miranda Gordon back in Salina, Crawford into Bad Street USA. No doubt about it. She can handle herself. We saw what happened at the last show where she took, and I know that was directly from her dad because I got to see her dad many times as a kid and stuff like that. Harken back to that. And she took things down. He did get the his after victory tribute, but I guess he's bringing some with him, but somebody else might be enjoying that. Absolute garbage. What do you think of that? Good names on that. You're going to get to see a lot. You're going to learn a little bit more about that as you do.
Well, absolutely. And I guess I probably should have prefaced this whole conversation by saying I'm not the guy that's going to come in and claim to be an expert on everyone on the roster, okay? It's never been like that. And anybody who's ever hired me to come in and do commentary, I always say this, look, let me be who I am, give me time to figure out who these guys are, and eventually it's going to be a match made in heaven. What I can tell you, though, is that I am very familiar with the legend Bam Bam. I'm familiar with Miranda Gordy. I'm very familiar with Niles Blanquet. And I'm telling you right now, if she gets her hands on him, she's going to break him in half. So I think he should have considered himself lucky that the last go-around, all he did was catch a bunch of wine to the face, okay? And when this match was proposed to him, I think he probably should have made an excuse. But now that he's so arrogant and so cocky, and him and Drake kind of almost remind me of each other, always disrespecting the fans, calling them dirty, calling them $2 chucks, okay? I think Niles Blanquet is going to get what he's got coming to him. And I'm actually pretty excited about it because I've been seeing this guy agitate and disrespect fans throughout the Midwest for a good while now. And I think he's finally going to get his comeuppance, man. I can't wait to be there and see it live.
Absolutely. That will be tomorrow night at the Kansas Ambassador Hotel at 1616 West Providence. Tickets are still available. I know they're going fast. You can also get them online at xWe. Also wrestling.com. You can get online tickets. That's a good opportunity. But get out there and be part of the xWe experience. And I reiterate the xWe experience is something like no other. You'll be brought in as a family. You'll be able to express your feelings to hate, to love, and do it very loud as we go along. Lots of great stuff that takes place there. 6 o'clock is the bell time. 5 o'clock VIP goes in. 5:30 is open. Get out there, be a part of it. The Night Owl Martinez will be there. If you see him around there, go up, shake his hand, say hello, welcome him to the XWE universe. I wish you nothing but the best, Mr. Martinez, in your new role, something like this, and everything else that you do as we go along. The professional wrestling is growing. It's getting back to where I like to see it. The fans are coming to it. They're really excited about it. And you're a part as well of this growing process as we go along. So I want to absolutely welcome you to the family there.
Well, listen, man, it's nothing short of an extreme honor to be involved with XWE, man. I take a great pride in playing a very small part in helping to grow pro wrestling, but particularly pro wrestling in the Midwest. I've done a lot of my blue-collar work over on the other side of the state in the St. Louis area. We've got a tremendous following out there, pretty well established here in Kansas City as well. But now it's time to expand out to the great state of Kansas and beyond. And I think to be associated with the KWA and XWE specifically is just another feather in my cap, man. And I know that this is a privilege and an honor, and I'm going to treat it that way. And so you can count on two things, just like you count on it with the Wrestle Talk podcast. You're going to get consistency. I will be there at every show between now and the end of 2020. That's how long I'm signed our contract right now. And I will make sure that we bring the highest quality possible to the fans out there for absolutely nothing. All you got to do is go to Twitch.com/XWE_Salina. And if you can make it out to the show, I think there's like a fight pass. There's a VIP package. General admission is free. All the concessions are cheap. The wrestlers will all be there to sign autographs and sell merchandise. You can't really beat the experience. And you know what my favorite part of it all is? It's all inside an air-conditioned building. Because God knows these days, I go to a lot of shows, bro, a lot of shows. And whenever I know that it's going to be nice and cool on the inside, man, I'm just like, thank you for a little bit of relief from this insane Midwest heat wave that we've been getting over the last couple of weeks. But there's one thing for sure, man. There's going to be people capitalizing on opportunities, and there's going to be a whole lot of people walking out with a gold rush this upcoming Saturday night, man. I could not be any more excited, brother.
Absolutely.
I just think you hit it right out of the park on that one there.
Environment. I know it gets hot in there. The fans explodes. Very comfortable environment with good air conditioning. I know the actual sports arena that used to be down there in Dallas didn't have it, and it was a very hot facility down there. Nothing like that. It was a great environment to come out and spend Saturday night just to come out and have a good time there. I think with that, that's all we have. Anything else you want to add over there? Just one maybe last thing about yourself. Tell the fans what you're going to do tonight.
Yes. Well, the only thing I can tell you guys for me on a personal level is me personally, I think I am a snippet of the American dream. I wasn't born in this country. I was born in Mexico. My parents came over the right way and worked their butts off for many, many years doing cleaning, cooking, so that I would have an opportunity to go to school. Before I got married, I was in line to go to Florida State University, but got married and started having children instead. But one thing that I didn't do, Rusty, and a lot of people do this when they get married and start having kids, they kind of give up on those aspirations, on those dreams that they had when they were teenagers and, young adults. I never did that. I always believed that there was going to be something in commentary or in entertainment that I could do that would allow me to still fulfill my primary responsibility as a parent, but then also still pursue my dream. It didn't happen right away. It took many years before I started going to independent shows, and it took even longer before I actually started figuring out what I wanted to do in independent wrestling. But that itch, that bug, it was always there, and I always listened to it. Even though I wasn't ready yet, I knew that at one moment I would get an opportunity to capitalize on it. And even though it didn't happen as early as I wanted it to, it's happening now. And this is probably one of the greatest opportunities I ever had. So if I could provide words of encouragement to anybody out there who's thinking about becoming a wrestler, a manager, a referee, a ring announcer, a commentator, or whatever, number one, don't give up on your dream. And number two, do the work and do it consistently at a high quality, and people will take notice, man. That's the only reason I'm sitting in front of you guys today. Rusty, it's an honor and a pleasure. We will be here every single Wednesday. You already know, WrestleTalkPodcast.com. If you got any questions, you can hit me up directly. It's Rene Martinez on Facebook, or just hit me a direct message, man. I'm available 24 hours a day to answer any questions, and I'm always ready and willing to learn, man. I'm ready. Let's do this thing.
We're real excited to have you on board. Now, like I said, that we kind of got everything kind of ironed out, the glitches out of here. Maybe down the road, like I said, we'll do some more lives together. We'll kind of keep the fans up to date with the things that are going on as we progress and we grow along. Mr. Martinez, I want to thank you for joining us. And like I said, guys, if you see him out there, go out, say hello, and welcome to the xWe family. Tomorrow night again, xWe Gold Rush 2019, out there at the Ambassador Hotel. Do not miss it. We
I missed it, folks.
Absolutely. With that, guys, we'll talk to you later, and we'll see you out there at the show.